But welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming. For those of you who don't know me, I think everyone knows me, right? My name is Dr. Ross, in case you didn't know. So we're going to be talking about a subject that is humongous. And when I was telling the staff that when I was trying to do this talk, it was like literally a 3.5-hour talk. And I had to compress. So I've got a lot of slides. Some of those I'm going to fly through. I promise that we can talk about it more one-on-one. The other thing is, with this kind of scope, I'm going to try and hit all the high points, but if you could hold off on your questions until the end. I will stick around for some question and answer and stuff, but if you're asking questions in the middle of it, it's going to go way over. Hopefully it's not going to go way over. Let's put it that way. Hopefully. So we're talking, I call this workshop Advanced Nutrition, because this isn't just sort of a class about what proteins are and what carbs are and what fats are and that sort of thing. This is really gives you more of the nuts and bolts of what we call the Maximized Living plans. So there's a number of different plans in Maximized Living on how to change your diet and how to eat better. And so this gives you a lot more of the advanced information. If it's kind of over your head, kind of tune out for a little bit, but we come back to a lot of things and kind of clear up things as we go. So hopefully it's not over anyone's head. So we're talking about the 3 Maximized Living plans: the basic plan, the core plan, and the advanced plan. The basic plan really isn't a plan at all. It's really just guidelines. And if you want the real nuts and bolts on the basic plan, it is eat God foods. Eat God-made foods. Simple as that. Avoid man-made foods. In the scope of food, the closer it is to the way God created it, which is straight from the ground, eating it raw, that kind of stuff, the better it is for you. And the more your body is specifically designed to digest that kind of food. The further away you get from the way God created it and into the man-made world, the worse it is in general. And the worse it is in terms of digesting it, the worse it in terms of what chemicals are put in it, all those kind of things. So in the basic plan, it's just learning what that entails. Drinking pure, unadulterated water is the basic plan. Learning what that water is kind of the trick to it. The core plan is an actual plan, and that's where you are looking to become healthier. You're looking to allow your body to heal. And there's a few very specific things we do there. The advanced plan is what we put people with fibromyalgia, heart disease, diabetes, cancer. A lot of these diseases are for the advanced plan. So the advanced plan is strict and it is harsh. Just put it that way. So you don't get to eat sugar at all. 0. You don't eat grains at all. 0. No milk at all. 0. No cheese, no dairy, nothing. So it's really just protein and vegetables. And by doing that, and really it boils down to our friend Gershon, who in Gershon therapy, he basically found that he could cure most diseases through nutrition, as well as a few other things. But the advanced plan is more advanced, no question. Come on in, guys. There's 2 seats right up here up front. Sorry. That's all right. This book that we have here is the Maximized Living Nutrition Plans. This has all the details and a lot more of the stuff that I'm talking about tonight. So if you have questions or if you really want to know more or you want to study it, that's the book to get. So dietary myths. Before we start into getting into things, it's important to really start with the myths that are out there, because the world of nutrition is just filled with propaganda and mistruths and flat-out lies. For example, a source of, who's heard of, it says a source of calcium or a source of, and in the cereals it always says a good part of, excuse me for a sec. Could you, no, he's on the land phone. So I would have told him, get out. So a source of really just means 10 to 17% of your daily recommended allowance. That's it. A source of means it has some in it. Now I can tell you that the FDA daily allowance is ridiculously small. So the vast majority of vitamins, minerals, things that the FDA does put a daily allowance on, I usually double or triple of what we actually need. So for example, vitamin D is something we talk about a lot. Vitamin D, I recommend 5,000 IUs a day. The FDA recommends 280. So you kind of go, wow, the numbers are way off, and there's a reason, because the FDA has really very little knowledge of what it goes into healthcare, or what goes into health. Lightly sweetened has no meaning at all. So when it says only lightly sweetened, what does that mean? It could have 40 grams of sugar, but it's lightly sweetened. Reduced fat. So all reduced fat means that percentage-wise of overall calories, it was less, up to 25% less. But if I take some hamburger and I add a bunch of sugar so that it has more calories, same amount of fat, I can now call it reduced fat. So you got to be wary of some of the things that go on. Natural has absolutely no definition. You see this all over, right? This is all natural. This is a natural form. What does that mean? Nothing. It's something else, you know. Trans fat free, you can still have trans fats in there. You know, there's a lot of things in the packaging. You can have chemicals in there, but you don't have to report them. Organic has 3 different criteria, 3 different levels. So with the 3 different levels, one is really not organic at all. It just means not genetically modified. Luckily, in California, if it's California certified organic, that is the highest level of organic in the nation. And so that means that it's not genetically modified. It wasn't having all sorts of pesticides and chemicals that are not natural put in it, and it uses natural fertilizer, not chemically produced fertilizer. So, you know, that type of organic is the highest level of organic.
So what is the Cal Organic?
So when questions, could we go to the end? Research of a lot of these things says in calories, in terms of calories, when you go to Applebee's or you go to Macaroni Grill or you go somewhere and they have the calories listed, which I think is a good thing, they've done research that's shown that they are sometimes off by double, or they have, sorry, that's supposed to be calories. They have half of the calories that it actually had in it. So when they actually did their analysis, it had double the calories of what they reported. Sometimes 8 times the amount of fat. So, and this was done over and over, this study. So a lot of companies are way underreporting what they actually have in it. Many vegetarian foods have just as many calories. So for example, Red Robin has a veggie burger, and they say it's healthy choice veggie burger. It has just as much calories and just as much fat as the regular burger. It's just got no meat. I don't know what the veggie side is it. But sit-down meals, for example, people say, well, don't go to fast food, go to something that takes longer, it's better for you. And they found out that in sit-down, on average, 38% more calories. So sit-down food, restaurant food in general, is not particularly healthy. Let's put it out that way. Just because McDonald's offers a salad doesn't mean it's a good salad. So what's the goal? If you really look at advanced nutrition, what's the goal? The goal is we want to change the way you eat, we want to change the way you think about food, and we want to change the way you process food in your body. So for example, the vast majority of us are sugar burners. We burn sugar for energy. But the healthiest people are actually fat burners. They burn fat. So how do you make the transition from a sugar burner to a fat burner? Well, it takes time, and it's a change in the diet. It's actually a change in the way you think, the change in the way you eat, and then your body changes the way it metabolizes food. So can it be done? Absolutely. For example, the advanced plan, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but the advanced plan is almost entirely meat or protein sources and vegetables. There's no carbs, there's no grains, there's no joy. But can you do it? Absolutely. The cultures around the world have been doing that for centuries, literally, and been very, very healthy. So is it possible that you can get away without your Wonder Bread and without your, you know, all the various sugars and condiments and all that stuff? Absolutely. Maybe the advanced plan is not for you. Maybe you want to make a core plan with a little bit of leeway there. That's fine too, but you're going to learn about how to do that today. So overall recommendations, and this is on your sheet, but in general, and of course it varies on the person, it varies on the size of who you are and what what type of activity levels you have. But in general, 250 grams of carbs per day. Protein is 50 grams per day, fat 65 grams per day. So notice that we don't use a 40% this and 30% that and 70% that. It's kind of just based loosely on those levels. Notice that 40 grams of sugar. So carbs doesn't necessarily mean sugars. Carbs are real carbs, complex carbs. So who can tell me how many grams of sugar is in 1 can of soda? 14 grams? Nope. 39 grams of sugar. 39 grams. So if you look at your daily recommendations, that's 1 can of soda. When you see people with the super giant gulp, they're getting, maybe 200 grams of sugar right there. When those kids are eating, like 1 chocolate bar is like 60 grams of sugar. So you're eating one of those, I mean, you shot your whole day of sugar. So we talk about the 3 dangers. Now these are the 3 things that you change in both the core plan and the advanced plan. The 3 things being sugar, fat, and toxins. So I do a whole talk on fats. Anyone go to my omega-3 class? Yeah, so we talked a lot about fats. We're going to review some of that. Toxins, I did a whole talk on toxins. And then sugar is another one that is just gigantic. Learn what sugar does to your body. So sugar is what makes you fat. Fat does not make you fat. Let's put it right out there. Fat in general, there's 2 types of fat. There's bad fats and good fats. But fat in general is not what makes you fat. It's not what causes obesity. It is sugar that causes a lot of the problems. So you can function with only 1 to 2 teaspoons of sugar in the bloodstream. Store excess sugar as fat. So when you put a lot of sugar in, it does 2 things. One is it creates damage to your cells. That's why diabetes is so bad. So the more sugar you have, the more damage you do. That damage really boils down to inflammation. So if you want to put it, in the most basic terms, sugar causes inflammation in your body. What causes heart disease? Inflammation. Inflammation of your artery walls. They then become, sort of brittle. That brittle area then attracts fats, and fats gleam onto that area. You start building plaque. You start having problems. You have an embolus that goes into your brain or into your heart. That's a heart attack or stroke. Sugar is what causes heart attacks, not fats. What causes cancer? Inflammation. Inflammation is what degenerates your immune system. Your immune system is what kills cancer. People say, oh, it's radiation. Oh, it's bad things, and it's telephone lines. It's all those things can cause cancerous cells. Even the sun can cause cancerous cells. But that's not what causes cancer. Cancer is when your immune system doesn't fight off those cells. So all of the people in here today, we generate about 1,000 cancer cells every day. But if our body's healthy, we fight it off. We clear it out. Come on in. There's one seat back there. Cancer is caused, and quote me on this, because this is not the medical association's view. Cancer is caused by a poorly functioning immune system. Cancer is an internal problem. So when I try and solve cancer from external methods, I give poison, which kills cancer cells, right? Am I jump-starting the internal system at all? Putting poison in your body, does that ever heal you? Never. It's never healed anybody of anything. Chemotherapy does not heal you of cancer. Chemotherapy may reduce the cancer cells, but unless you turn that internal immune system back on, you never heal, which is why the Gershon therapy and why the advanced plan really solves that issue. Because you start eating the right way, you decrease the sugar, you decrease the inflammation. You decrease that stress upon your nervous system and upon your immune system, your body starts to function better. And you start to fight off cancer cells. Because guess what? God gave us the internal power to fight off cancer. Every single one of us. There's no sort of genetic, problem where, oh, I don't fight off cancer because my genetics are bad. Harvard does studies that show that only 3% of cancers are genetic. Only 3% of cancers are genetic. 3% of cancers. So all this breast cancer stuff, all this colon cancer stuff is probably because that person is eating way too much sugar, just like their parents ate way too much sugar. They create inflammation, which corrodes their immune system, and they don't fight off cancer cells. Sugar and insulin is a huge thing. So the more sugar you eat, what happens to your insulin levels?
My favorite food in the whole wide world.
Goes to the roof.
Yeah, it goes through the roof. That causes diabetes because the more we bombard the body with insulin, the more we burn out those receptors. And over time, those receptors no longer work. So we shock the system, shock the system. Every meal, shock the system. More sugar, shock the system with insulin, shock the system, shock the system. Over 40 years, that system no longer works. It's been shocked too many times. So eating less sugar will shock the system less. So it's pretty simple. IGF is an immunoglobulin formulation, which basically, this just shows you that it decreases your immune system. Sugar kills off your immune system, which leads to cancer, which leads to diabetes, which leads to heart disease. If you're following along, that's all the 3 major diseases. And I can show you that sugar is probably related in most every disease. So when the government is putting more and more subsidies into high fructose corn syrup, which is bombarding the market, and I'll show you that high fructose corn syrup is an interesting study right now. Who's seen the commercials that say, turns out your body can't tell the difference between sugar and fructose. So the reality is that they're saying, most of these scientists are saying, you need to add 83 calories per gram for high fructose corn syrup. In other words, it's sweeter than sugar. They've done studies at Princeton where they've taken all these rats and they divide them into 2 groups. This group gets a certain amount of calories of high fructose corn syrup. This group gets the same amount of calories of cane sugar. And guess what? The high fructose corn syrup group of rats has diabetes and cancer and heart disease and obesity and all sorts of the problems that we face, the Gen X problems. These other rats, relatively normal, just by high fructose corn syrup. So you think that's, treats you the same? You think your body doesn't know the difference? It knows the difference, guarantee it. So the next one is fat. So I said earlier that fat doesn't make you fat. Sugar makes you fat. Fat is really a very healthy part of your body. And if I show you let's see if I can see that diagram. So here's a diagram of a cell wall. So you have something like 1 trillion cells in your body, and they all have a protective wall around it. Here's an interesting thing. When we learn, and I'll take you back to your high school days, but we learn about the cell and the structure of the cell. We learned that there's a nucleus of that cell, and then there's a nucleus of the nucleus called the nucleolus, right? And we're always led to believe that the nucleolus of that cell is the brain. So if you kill off the nucleolus, the cell would die. Just like if you kill your brain, it doesn't matter how healthy your body is, you're dead. Well, guess what? Scientists killed off the nucleolus, cell still survives. Still keeps going, no problem at all. It's like it wasn't there. So then they killed the nucleus. Well, if it's not the nucleolus, it's got to be the nucleus. So they killed the nucleus, that internal part of the cell. Cell still survives, still keeps going, still keeps metabolizing sugar, still produces whatever it was designed to produce. So they said, well, what is the brain? Where is the brain of the cell, of each individual cell? And they found that the brain is the cell wall. That's what makes the decisions. And the cell wall is made up of fats. Almost all fats are made through that. It allows movement of molecules through the cell. It codes for what it receives or doesn't receive. It codes for what hormones or what chemicals or proteins are produced. You kill the cell wall, you kill the cell. That is the decision maker. If you put a cell in a container and on this side you put poison, on this side you put food, the cell moves towards food every single time. It moves away from poison towards food. Why does it do that? Because the cell wall senses where the food is and senses where the poison is. It's the cell wall that's so important. The cell wall is almost entirely made up of fats. That's why you need good fats. Let me go back. So we talked about Fat does not make you fat. It's the inability to burn fat that makes you fat. That's basically sugar. When you can't burn fat, it's because you're a sugar burner. Healthy fats help your body burn fat. So when we put people on diet, we put them on a high-fat diet. Believe it or not. Good, healthy fats. And not just, we've all heard that saturated fats are bad, right? Saturated fats are the bad ones. Not so. There's a lot of saturated fats that are very good for your body. I'll show you that in a little bit. Saturated fats are not the enemy. It's damaged fats. It's denatured fats. It is rancid fats, vegetable oils that are the danger. And that is man-made fats. Don't exist in nature until man creates it. So the core thing is eliminate damaged fats, replace them with healthy fats. So where do you get damaged fats? Fast food, any fat that's been superheated, fried foods. You'll find it in most candy, like chocolate and all that kind of stuff. That's the bad kind of fats. You'll find it in most man-made processed foods is where the bad fats are. The partially hydrogenated soy oils and things like that. That's the bad fats. Trans fats, of course, is the worst of all. That's the problematic fat. Rancid fats, vegetable oils, those are the bad fats. So healthy fats, like I said, builds the cell membranes or the cell wall, helps us absorb vitamins, cushions the vital organs, protects you from extreme temperatures, regulates and makes up the building blocks of hormones, lowers inflammation. All those kind of things are what good fats do for our body. It's so vital that you take in good fats. So when I recommend that you take omega-3s, and I recommend it's actually a mixture of omega-3s, 6s, and 9s, all good healthy fats. That's why I want you to take that, is because it helps your body in so many ways. Builds up your immune system, builds up your cell walls, helps protect you, all those kind of things. Here's some examples of what healthy fats are. So of course, olive oil, fish oil. Most oils from seeds, there's one big example and nuts that you will not ever hear me say, and that's peanuts. Peanuts are almost entirely bad, so avoid peanuts whenever you can. Your body has a tremendously hard time to digest it anyway. Fatty fish, of course, are great sources. So how about fish that's been born and raised on a fish farm? Good sources?
Farm raised, no.
Yeah, because it's corn-fed, yeah. So you feed a cow corn, and what happens? It bloats and then eventually dies in a very short time. You give chicken corn, what happens to the chicken? Gets big, all those kind of problems. You feed fish corn, it gets fat real quick, looks big, but it's really unhealthy on the inside. You eat unhealthy things, guess what you're going to be? Unhealthy. Yeah. So good sources of. Now, yogurt is on here. I want to caution people. Yogurt processed, like man processed, is very bad. Tons and tons of sugar. Milk products in general that are commercially produced are generally bad. So you want to avoid most milk products. Naturally, so it's saying raw cheese and raw yogurt, that's not too bad. Grass-fed is a big one, the way God designed it. And remember, coming back to that core principle, if it's closer to the way God designed it, better for you. So the low-fat, high obesity. So remember, it really came out in the 60s, but it was prevalent in the 70s, like cut all the fat. In fact, remember when they said, don't eat eggs, because eggs are high in cholesterol. Cholesterol is bad for you, all that kind of stuff. Did the amount of obesity go down in that time frame? No, it shot up. So they found that in study after study after study, you reduce the fat in your diet, what causes, or what eventually is the result? You become fatter as a result. You actually put on weight. So you got to eat lots of fats. Fats are important. Reduce fat, reduce smoking, more exercise, increase heart disease. So these are studies that they thought was right. So you reduce the fat in your diet, that's good, right? They found the opposite. You want to increase the fat in your diet, but the good fats. So this was basically what this boils down to, this slide boils down to, is the statin medications, which I've fought, and I know Dr. Trish, Dr. Gina, and we've all fought this from day one, which is the premise is cholesterol is what is a good indicator of heart disease. And it could not be farther from the truth. In fact, there's not been one controlled randomized study that has ever shown that high cholesterol makes it more prevalent in heart disease or, that kind of stuff, heart attacks or strokes. So when you look at the studies, and they've been handing out statin medications like Lipitor and Crestor and all these stuff like candy now for the last 10 years, has the amount of heart disease gone down in those people that have lower cholesterol? No. Has it gone up? Absolutely gone up. So, and here's the thing that just kills me. It says, FDA says that lowering your cholesterol is good for your heart and all that stuff. The same people that run the FDA board are people that, were on Pfizer and all these other drug companies that make those drugs. But the premise there was that when you have lower cholesterol, it should equate to lower heart attacks or strokes. Not one study has ever been done, not one study that has ever shown that lowering your cholesterol artificially has led to less chance of heart attacks or strokes. In fact, some of the studies, and the Cholesterol Myths is a book that's in my bookshelf there, has shown the opposite. So you want higher cholesterol, which is your body's own innate intelligence going on, that actually lowers your chance of heart attacks or strokes. So don't be afraid of cholesterol. Cholesterol's never been the enemy. It's saturated, rancid fats, vegetable oils, trans-saturated fats. That is the problem. Fat in meat causes heart disease and cancer and osteoporosis. Here's the truth. Meat-eating societies have lived free of heart disease and cancer for centuries. They've been eating meat. There's been a lot of societies that really don't eat anything but meat. They eat meat and whale blubber and fats and all that kind of stuff, and they don't have heart disease. In fact, the Eskimos was one group of people that they really studied, and these people eat a diet which we would faint at because it's all fat and all protein, and yet they don't have cancer or heart disease or diabetes the way we do until they're introduced to our diet, and they start eating sugars and all that kind of stuff. Vitamin D deficiency is related to bone disease and heart disease and cancer. Saturated fat is an important fat at the cellular level. It prevents heart disease and does not cause it. So very important that you start eating fats. And I'll show you what some good sources of saturated fats are. So we already talked about, saturated fats being a very good, important part of that. Lowers LDL cholesterol, prevents oxidation of cholesterol. All these kind of things are very, very important. Those who regularly, so this is a study on women, those who regularly ate the highest amount of saturated fat showed less plaque buildup in the arteries. Overall better health. I mean, this is something that, they keep telling you, oh, well, eat less fat. It's the opposite. It's just eat better fats. Just don't eat the bad kind of fats. Coconut is probably one of the best sources, if not the best source, of saturated fat. So cooking in coconut oil, eating coconut products, using coconut oil as a spray or all those kind of things is such a phenomenal way to get saturated fats in your diet. And so you can find coconut oil now in just about any store. Any grocery store will have it. It's easy to cook with. It has a nice flavor once you get used to it, even if you're one of those people that hate coconuts. I don't know how you can hate coconuts anyway, but so coconut oil is phenomenal. A lot of people cook with olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, which is a good secondary. The problem with olive oil is that at higher temperatures, it becomes what? Rancid. Yeah, you damage it. You damage the oil, whereas coconut oil is very stable. There was an oil called canola oil. Anyone know what the canola meant? It was Canada oil. The first can came from Canada, and then it's the letters of the oil itself. And it was a man-made oil that is very, very stable at higher temperatures. The problem is that it is a rancid oil to begin with. Even when they create it, it has inherent problems. So when you see a lot, oh, made with canola oil, it's good, man-made oil. It's like canola oil was actually made as a lubricant for machinery initially. And they said, wow, we can cook in this stuff, and it's great. Canola, any man-made oil is bad, but certainly any vegetable oil and certainly any rancid oil or that kind of oil. So sugar, fat, toxins. So we're going to talk about toxins. I'm going to fly through this because we did toxins a while ago. The first thing that I always say when we talk about toxicity of the body is God gave us this incredible power to detoxify our body. We've got liver, we've got kidneys, we've got skin, we've got buffers in your bloodstream. So we've got a tremendous ability to get rid of toxins. But we can also help out that God-given ability by not consuming more toxins, right? So source of toxins, everywhere. In fact, studies have shown that even if you are the healthiest person on the planet, and there's a guy, Kevin Trudeau, who wrote a bunch of books and that kind of stuff, and he literally, sort of put this big net over his house and has like circulated air that's filtered and water that's filtered, and he only eats like the most stringent organic foods and stuff. He even had toxins found in his body because it's in everywhere. It's in the carpet. Regardless of where it is, know that you're going to get some in it. You're going to get some in your body. That's just the way it goes. But God gave us a system to detox that. So what I'm talking about here, because I don't want to scare anyone because it's like everywhere, is trying to avoid it where you can avoid it. That's just better for your body. So the FDA has approved 3,000, and that's more like 5,000 now, additives, preservatives, and colorings. And guess what? They don't have to be listed on the label. So if they're in a certain dose, you don't have to get them in the label. When I talk openly against vaccines and specifically mercury in the vaccines, I said I don't want any mercury in my body. I don't want any mercury in my kid's body. So when they said, oh, but it's safe. Oh, that dose is safe. No, there is no safe dose. Any mercury is bad. Mercury, bad. No mercury, good. It's as simple as that, right? So I said, your toxin-filled chemicals that you want me to inject right into my kids. The first layer of defense, toxicity-wise, is your skin, right? Even when you eat food, bear in mind that your digestive tract is external. So you've got skin, pseudo-skin, all the way through your digestive tract. That food or that toxin has to make it into your body still, has to get through my skin, right? Which is the internal lining of your digestive tract. But when I take a needle and I inject it right into my body, I'm forgoing that first layer of defense. So I'm putting those chemicals right into my bloodstream. So all toxins are bad, but bear in mind that we've got all sorts of stuff in our food right now. The more man-made it is, the more chemicals it'll have in it. So man-made estrogens. Now, I show you this because, we have little girls, and I have a little girl, and those little girls are showing, womanly qualities earlier and earlier and earlier. Why? Because there's a ton of estrogen and estrogen reproducing sort of chemicals in foods. Best to avoid that stuff. Soy is a great example. So genetically modified soy turns into an estrogen-like product in the body. So if you eat a ton of soy products, you are going to get more estrogen in your body. For a boy, that means you're going to show more female-type qualities. For a girl, that means you're going to show more female-type qualities. It's pure and simple. Estrogen is also a fuel for cancer. So cancer rampantly goes through the body with more estrogen. Pesticides, of course, we were talking a little bit about the video that was on Food Inc. And they said that, when we had, vegetables, there was a season for those vegetables. So in the middle of winter, you wouldn't expect ripe tomatoes and strawberries and all those kind of things. Now we can find those things all year round. Why? Because they're flown in from other places, or they're made in, chemical houses sort of thing. Because it has to travel a long distance, what they do is they pick those tomatoes green. So they're not ripe. They put them in this bin, and then they gas them. So they have gas in there that turns them ripe, or turns them red anyway. Ripe is a sort of a unknown quantity there, but it certainly turns them red. So we get these big, beautiful tomatoes in the heat of winter, and we say, oh, this is great. And you know, you don't go to a hamburger joint and not get tomatoes on your hamburger at any time of year, because they're using those chemically produced foods. So pesticides, chemicals that are on your thing, if you ever buy fruits or vegetables from a market and you come home and you don't wash them, you're making a huge mistake. Washing them is simple and easy, and it cleans off a lot of the junk that's on those things. So I could go on and on about some of this stuff and the DDT and the stuff they spray in the air and all this kind of stuff, but best just know that it's there, so you want to avoid it whenever possible. Soy, we talked about soy mimics estrogen. Now there is good, healthy organic soy. Don't get me wrong. This is the non-genetic or the genetically modified versions of soy. Now there's 2 products in the United States that are genetically modified to like a large degree, 90-something%. Those 2 products are corn and soy. So those 2 things, you're going to, if you're eating it, you're probably going to get the genetically modified version. Now you can buy an ear of corn that's not genetically modified, but any corn that you see in the products, and it is almost impossible, and I challenge anyone to walk up and down the supermarket aisles and just pick up anything and not find corn in it. Even glasses, like plastic cups, are made of corn. You know, the wrappers are made of corn. Everything's made of corn because the government subsidizes it. It's the cheapest thing we can have. So avoid non-organic forms of soy. Additives, so the nitrates that, so a lot of meats are not actually bright red and looking so beautiful that, you know, so here's the thing. When we walk through a supermarket, we see all these meats and they're packaged like a steak. And we see it in our eye like, wow, that's a steak, like on the grill, you know. We don't see it, oh, that's a cow, or that's a pig, or that's a chicken, or whatever it is. So they process it and they place it out there to trick you into thinking, well, this is not an animal that we're eating, you know. And one of the ways they do that is they spray it with chemicals to make it look red or make it look a different way. Nitrates are one example. Nitrates have absolutely proven to cause cancer. So if you're eating a lot of hot dogs or you're eating a lot of these processed meats that have nitrates in them, know that you're probably going to get cancer. I mean, it's going to degenerate your nervous system. Especially pancreatic cancer, which is the worst one. Pancreatic cancer, by the way, is what killed Steve Jobs, right? And Steve Jobs went to a Gerson therapist who, you know, in Gerson therapy, they have 70% success rate with pancreatic cancer. What's the success rate in the AMA or in the medical community? Yeah, less than, I heard it, 14%. So chemotherapy clearly does not work. If you do nothing, you just sort of wither away and die, your chances of success rate are something higher than 14. So your chances are better if you do nothing with pancreatic cancer than if you do chemotherapy. And Steve Jobs unfortunately chose this way. He got chemotherapy. He didn't go the Gerson therapy, which has 70% success rates. I don't know how people can overlook that anymore. It's just so incredible to me. But anyway, so pancreatic cancer related to nitrites. MSG. So entering Chinatown. Today, the danger of MSG is high. So MSG is an additive that they put in foods to make it taste better. Bear in mind that we all know, in the food industry and as nutritionalists, we all know that there is addiction to food. We are all, to some degree, addicted to food. All of us. Well, not me, but you guys. We are all addicted to food, and one of the ways they do that is they combine flavors. So, for example, the bet you can't bite just one chip. Who was telling me they had chips today, Pringles or something? Yeah, so you have one of those chips. A chip is a great example because it has carbs, which we all love. It has salt, which we all love. It has fat, which we all love. It has sugar, which we all love. So they combine all those things in a thin, easy to bite thing, and it's like, oh, I gotta have more, gotta have more, gotta have more. It stimulates your brain in a very specific way. MSG is the accumulation of that. They created a chemical that literally tricks your brain into liking this. And they can sprinkle it on everything. The problem with MSG is that it's a known excitotoxin, so it excites the cells and causes degeneration and damage. It also is highly allergenic. It can cause symptoms like MS and other neurologic degenerative diseases. All these kind of things are dangerous, and it's all related to MSG. Where do we find most of the MSG? Highly processed man-made foods. So if you can avoid it, guess how you avoid it? Eat God-made foods. God didn't put MSG in there. In fact, there's a lot of MSG does exist in a very small amount in your body, and so they were saying, well, it's a natural. Come back to this. It's a natural thing. Well, it's not natural when you sprinkle it on food. That's anything but natural. Antibiotics, vaccines, growth hormones. This is our meat right now. And for any of you that eat, one of the things that I talked about a lot about in my Omega class is when you eat a lot of the adulterated meats now that they have that are filled with these chemicals, you need to balance your omega ratios. I'll show you what that looks like. But the omega ratios are so far out of balance in these cattle and these chickens and all these kind of things that we're totally tainting, that when we eat it, we become imbalanced. That creates inflammation. Inflammation leads to those diseases. So all these things are problematic. Now, it's not just, so we're giving all these cattle growth hormones so they grow big, right? But then their immune systems are shot, so we have to dump them with antibiotics. But then their whole system is shot, but luckily they're big enough that we can slaughter them then before, they really tank. So this is the whole premise. Now, guess what? When they go to the bathroom, when they poop and pee, their residues are now in everything else. So all those cattle are so close together, they're just living in filth. That chemicals go into the water supply. The water supply then are used to, help grow crops, all that kind of stuff. In fact, they've shown that there's antibiotic residue in almost every major source of water in the United States now. There's birth control residues in almost every major water source of the United States, because women are taking birth control, they're excreting it to some degree, and it's getting into our water supply. So, not to scare you, again, coming back to this thing that we have a detox system, but you want to avoid that when you can. So, what's the alternative? Grass-fed beef, organic beef. Costs a little more, it costs a lot less in healthcare costs down the road. Artificial sweeteners, I did a whole class on this. Well, we did a whole class on this. So we know that artificial sweeteners kill your body much faster than sugar. If you want to survive, do not take this stuff into your body. I'm always amazed when I see people in fast food restaurants, which I do sometimes go into. I see people in fast food restaurants and they order the big old hamburger with the French fries. Oh, I'll take a Diet Coke though. It's like, are you kidding me? You got all the chemicals, now you got more chemicals? High fructose corn syrup is not that much better, but one of the main principles that we talk about with changing the way you diet and so forth is get rid of the juices, get rid of anything other than water. Drink water with every meal, just water, nothing else, water. If you go to a fast food restaurant, which in small amounts is okay, it's chemically toxic, but it's okay in small amounts, drink water, 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 water. So this is the core plan. Remember, we had the basic plan, the core plan, and the advanced plan. So the core plan is replace good fats with replace your bad fats with good fats. Simple premise there. Naturally raised meats versus unnaturally raised meats. So get rid of the unnatural sort of corn-fed beef or chicken or whatever it is and replace it with good sources of protein. And the last one, whole carbohydrates, which are like complex carbs, get rid of the sugar. Drastically reduce the sugar. So those 3 steps. Sounds pretty easy, right? 3 steps? It's not easy. It's pretty hard. But you do it in small steps. Drink lots of water. I put on there half your body weight. So you take your body weight, divide it by 2. In ounces, that's how much water you should consume a day. All at once, if possible. There's a person that died right before you go to bed. So organic and natural. So you can find this stuff. In fact, I know you went and got, an organic, grass-fed, naturally raised animal. You can buy like quarter cow or half a cow. We did that. We filled up our freezer. Now we have meat for like a year. When you go to Trader Joe's or you go to Whole Foods, you pay a little more for that kind of stuff, but it's so much better for you. If you don't want it, because we don't eat a whole lot of meat anyway, we have other stuff, but protein supplements are a great way. So the protein supplement, for example, that we have is all natural, no antibiotics, no chemicals in it. It's grass-fed. It's the source of protein is a very good, healthy source of protein. So you're getting good source of protein without getting all the chemicals and so forth. Bioaccumulation. So the reason I show you this is that when you have the bottom of the thing, so you have bacteria and phytoplankton and so forth, they're sucking up, toxins wherever they are, and they're kind of becoming toxic. But then as you move up, so the things that eat those become a little more toxic. So you eat toxic things, you become toxic. Then the things that eat those become more toxic. Things that eat those become more toxic. Things that eat those more toxic. So the highest toxicity levels are the animals that eat everything, all the toxic stuff. And that right now is man. So carnivores are generally a lot more toxic. They say 10 times greater than herbivores. So when you eat other animals, you're eating their toxicity level as well. So important to know so that, if you, and I'm not saying you should all be vegetarians, but a lot of our diet should be vegetarian. You can eat protein. I eat protein, but, there's lots of sources of protein, not just meat. Omega-6, omega-3 ratios. So ideal ratio is 4 to 1. We talked about if you have a cow and it's eating grass the way God intended, its ratio will be 4 parts omega-6 to 1 part omega-3. That's what its ideal ratio. It is non-inflammatory at that ratio. Typical person, 20 to 1 when I measure them. 20 to 1. That is very inflammatory, all sorts of issues in there. So how do you get back to 4 to 1? Eat grass-fed, stop eating the bad stuff, and supplement with omega-3, pure omega-3. So that even if you're 20 to 1, if I start eating a lot more omega-3, this number comes up. So maybe 20 to 10, which is actually 2 to 1, right? So you can influence that number by doing that. Ratio in grass-fed beef, 4 to 1. Ratio in grain-fed beef, 21 to 1. So we eat grain-fed beef, what do we become? 20, yeah, we become fat, we become highly diabetic, we become cancerous, we become stricken with heart disease. What about dairy? So I do talk about dairy. I'm not against dairy, let's put it that way. I'm not against dairy. I don't consume it very much myself at all because I don't see how because pasteurization is done even on organic milk. So you have organic cows that are free range and all that kind of stuff, and you take their milk is much healthier than the commercially done milk. So commercially, let's put it this way, if you've never seen the Food Inc. and you've never seen Food Matters or some of these videos, a commercial dairy cow sits in a pen for its entire life, which is usually about 7 years. And it is just fed with chemicals nonstop. It's producing milk 24 hours. They just keep those things on its teats all the time, 24 hours, and it's just milking constantly. The milk is just going, it just eats, it eats, it eats, it goes. 7 years, they finally burn it out in 7 years. They have to just pump it with antibiotics constantly because its immune system is shot. They give it hormones to make it milk. We're putting that in our kids saying, oh, be sure to drink your milk. It's a good source of calcium. First of all, it's a terrible source of calcium. And secondly, it's highly mucus forming. And thirdly, it's filled with lots of chemicals. It is nothing what God created. So the flip side is the old milk cow that they used to have on every farm that they would bring in once or twice a day and they'd milk. That is true. I mean, that is filled with good saturated fats. Good saturated fats. You think God didn't know? Good saturated fats. So when you look at it, you want to have raw, healthy milk. The problem is that you don't get a whole lot of raw sources anymore. In fact, they closed down a market in LA that was selling unpasteurized milk. And they closed it down. They said, this is dangerous. And they said, where's all the sick people that are buying this? Because they would bring it in every morning. Remember, the milkman used to come with the, you know. Now if you say, hey, your kid looks just like the milkman, you know, it's like, who's the milkman? There's no milkman.
Someone that shouldn't have been there.
Yeah. So the milkman used to bring the bottles, because it had to be glass, and they used to bring it every day. And you'd have to drink it within 1 to 2 days because it would go bad. You know, what an idea that good, healthy food goes bad because bacteria and viruses, and, well, not viruses, fungus and enzymes like to eat it. You know, when you put a thing of Wonder Bread out on the counter, it stays soft for 3 decades because nothing likes to eat it except for humans, because it's filled with sugar, chemicals, you know, all that kind of stuff. So all that stuff. Commercial dairy, lots of antibiotics. We talked about that. Pasteurization and homogenization, they basically taint proteins in those milk. So they say flash, ultra flash, pasteurize, all that kind of stuff. Super high heat, all that kind of stuff. Yes, it does kill the bacteria, but guess what? We don't need to worry about the bacteria. We've got a healthy immune system. They never used to pasteurize the milk from the cow, and then people didn't die everywhere. So yes, it is, you know, it may have some bacteria in it, but the reality is you go to commercial farms, that's where all the bacteria live, because it's unhealthy animals. Bacteria love unhealthy animals because they're no challenge. They don't have great immune systems. So a lot of this stuff, if you can avoid it, avoid it. I choose to, we drink almond milk, sometimes organic soy milk. There's lots of alternatives here. You know, there's cheese that is non-dairy cheese now. You can buy it, and it tastes good. So there's lots of alternatives. So dairy, you can look at pasteurized, causes tooth decay, produces deficiency in calcium, is most destroyed at the vitamin A. Vitamin B is 38% destroyed, vitamin C 20 to 50% destroyed. But you look at raw milk, prevents tooth decay. So kids that drank raw milk had less cavities, 50% to 90% more child growth when you have raw milk, good source of calcium, vitamin A, all the vitamins are intact. That's the difference between raw and pasteurized. So coming back to the core plan, you want to replace the bad fats with healthy fats. You want to have good, healthy sources of protein, get the bad sources of protein out, and you want to have good, complex carbs, not sugars. Pretty simple. So vegetable, now this kind of goes into a little more depth, but so there's glycemic rates, that how fast your sugar goes up, your blood sugar goes up when you eat it. So something that's highly glycemic means that when you eat it, like that's the highest one in terms of a fruit is watermelon. So when you eat watermelon, your blood sugar shoots up fast. And what else shoots up fast? Insulin levels. So those are not as good. So lower glycemic index, learn what lower glycemic index fruits and vegetables are, and focus on those and not on the high glycemic stuff. Raw foods, of course, the more raw it is, the better. The more you cook it, the less digestible and the less value it has for us, simply put. So let's talk about the advanced plan. So the advanced plan is really for people that are in a state of inflammation or disease. That's what we say, a state of disease. So they have cancer, they have heart disease, they have diabetes, they have fibromyalgia, they have all this stuff. So comparing, so the nutrition for families is primarily the core plans. Most diets will work. Calorie counting might even work. With the advanced plan, you're looking at repairing your hormones. So you're really looking at starting the system from scratch. So it's like rebooting the system, learning how to process foods again. Inflammation of disease management, accelerated weight loss, complete health restoration. So the question is, how long do you have to do this stuff? And we'll show you that. So all these kind of things is what we generally use the advanced plan on. And I can tell you that even some of these things I don't use the advanced plan on because it's very tough to eat the advanced plan way. Burns fat much greater than the core plan, detoxifies much greater than the core plan, reduces inflammation, of course, much better than the core plan, balances hormones much better than the core plan. So I talked about earlier what a fat burner was with a sugar burner. For sugar burners, you have to be very consistent with reducing or eliminating the sugar in your diet and in increasing the fats. So when you do that, over time, and a lot of times it takes a year or more, you will become a fat burner, not a sugar burner, which means when you eat fats, the fats will be processed and used as energy. So right now, most of you, most of us, when we eat fat, it goes and it's processed into putting into storage. We don't want to use it as energy because we know there's sugar coming. And if there's sugar coming, we'll just use the sugar. It's easier, right? But when there's no sugar coming, we learn to burn fat. We learn to consume fat and use fat as our energy. So the way you do that is you eliminate sugar, pure and simple. Sugar burners, of course, rely on sugar. Fat burners rely on fat for energy. So I was showing here what we talked already about inflammation and sugar. So let's skip over that. Here's a thing that I thought was just funny I came across. So aspirin, we've all been led that Bayer aspirin, we take an 81 milligram aspirin every day, right? Who here has been told or is on, you don't have to admit it, but that you should be taking aspirin every day? Yeah, the doctors always tell you that. Well, here's the thing. Taking daily aspirin doubles your risk of cancer. That's from the Journal of Cancer. Increases 68 risk of pancreatic cancer. That's the worst kind of cancer. Increases 84 risk of hemorrhagic stroke. Who came up with this aspirin is great? Bayer, creators of aspirin. So the thick blood does not create heart attacks. So aspirin absolutely thins your blood. But is thinning your blood good for you? No. It's terrible for you. It carries less oxygen. It can get through a plaque better. But guess what? That doesn't break up the plaque. It actually increases the plaque over time. So all these kind of things. The truth about aspirin. Anyone says, yeah, I'm on daily aspirin, and the doctor says it's good, get off it. You don't need it. Start consuming more fats. Remember, you take more saturated fats, it cleans out your arteries. It's the opposite of what the doctors are saying. So reset the hormonal pathways. If you need to reset the hormonal pathways, and a lot of us are totally burnt out in terms of our thyroid, our estrogen levels. If you're very low in energy, you should consider the advanced plan for at least 30 days. At least 30 days. And maybe even more. My wife and I did the advanced plan, which was basically just protein and vegetables. There's nothing else. It's protein and vegetables. Now, there's lots of different vegetables you can have. There's lots of different sources of protein. But there's no carbs. There's no starchy vegetable. There's no carbs are out. Sugar is out. Ketchup was out. Ketchup was my hardest one. Ketchup's tons of sugar. I love ketchup. Ketchup's just my thing. Yeah, on my French fries and on top of my burger. So if you want to reset the hormone levels, you take out sugar. So no sugars, no grains, no fruits. Because guess what fruits have? Lots of sugar. So berries in moderation. So some berries are actually not so filled with sugar.
And the book says Granny Smith apples, too.
Granny Smith apples, yes, because they are very low in sugar. So there are some exceptions there, but it's really just vegetables and meat. Vegetables and protein.
Is sugar just sugar? You know what I'm saying?
No.
Sugar just, well, there's a different type of sugar.
Well, there's lots of different types of sugar, but sugar is sugar. When we talk about that, whether it's fructose, whether it's glucose, whatever it is. Question, so for how long?
2 years.
However long it takes. So how do you know when you can maybe modify and start eating some fruits and that kind of stuff? When you start to feel like your body's coming back. So only you can tell me that. But 30 days is that time, and it's biblical. 30 days is enough to make a habit of something. So 30 days, if you do something for 30 days, it starts to become like a pattern in your body. It starts to groove a habit or a behavior. 30 days. You do it for 15 days, not enough. 20 days, not enough. Anything over 30 days is what you need to do. Now, it's tough, especially if you don't plan. So if you go to a ball game and you're hungry, don't go to the concession stand and think, I want a good, healthy source of protein with some vegetables, please. And just steam the vegetables, no salt on them. Yeah, good luck. Have a nitrite dog. So you can do it. Can it be done? Absolutely. We've helped a lot of people in here. When you go on the advanced diet, honestly, it is tough in the very beginning. It is tough. You're constantly craving things. I craved potato chips. I craved ketchup. Just a little bit of ketchup. But you know what? You get through it. The cravings go away, just like tobacco, just like alcohol, just like all the things that people are addicted to. So this is basically just saying that you looked at some of the groups of people that existed for centuries with literally no heart disease, no cancer, and they existed on this kind of diet. So advanced plan, good fats, of course, moderate your intake of protein, eliminate grain, sugars, and fruits, except for berries, Granny Smith apples, grapefruit in moderation. Carb replacements, I always show this because you can replace, so some people are so addicted to bread and they go, I couldn't do without bread and there's just no way, and whatever it is. So you can get flaxseed bread, cupcakes, all that stuff, flaxseed muffins, flax meat, hot cereal. You can get almond flour, you can get nut seed cereals, you can get nut seed crackers and breads. They taste pretty good. They're more grainy for sure. They're thicker and denser, but they definitely do, have the consistency of bread. And you can make, sort of hamburger type things out of them or sandwich things out of them, and they are not the same kind of carbs that you had before. So can you do it? This is from the paleo diet. Anyone read the paleo diet? I mean, it was a book that came out, but it basically was promoting the advanced diet. That's what it was. And it says basically DNA evidence shows that the human genome has changed less than 0.02% in 40,000 years. Nature determined what our bodies needed thousands of years before civilization developed, before people started farming and raising livestock. So we have created this new diet in the last, really it's the last like 70 years, with all sorts of products that never existed before in the history of man, that certainly God did not create. And we have kind of been led to believe that it's natural. I showed you in our last talk about the Nutri-Grain bar. Well, it's got to be good. It's got Nutra in the title, It's a sugar bar. It had 18 sources of sugar in there, 18 sources of sugar. That's not natural. So the paleo diet has showed that if you eat this stuff, you can literally reverse disease. Literally reverse disease. So I wanted to quickly, how am I doing for time? Way behind as usual. So I want to go over just what I think is essential and what I take, because people always ask me, well, what do you take? I'll take what you take. So I do the essential fats. I do the omega-3 fatty acids. I actually take a combination of 3, 6, and 9, which we have here, and I take about 1,000 milligrams a day. Vitamin D3, I mentioned 5,000 I use per day. Almost everybody, and I can almost guarantee it, everybody in this room is probably vitamin D deficient if you don't take vitamin D. Now, if you take vitamin D, you're probably fine. But when we test blood, almost everybody is vitamin D deficient. Calcium with magnesium, I certainly recommend this as we get older. You take it right before bed. So your body processes calcium mostly at night. Magnesium is a natural sedative, so it works perfectly. The magnesium and calcium go together. They run the two sides of the absorption chain. So calcium, magnesium is what I always recommend everyone take. And a green shake is I take it with protein. That's basically the green things up. There's different varieties. I like the Doctor's First. There is, what is it, Visalis is up there, so you can try what their stuff there. So there's lots of different varieties. I do that instead of a multivitamin. I've never been a fan of multivitamins, and I'll tell you why. There's a lot of junk on the market. And so Centrum, anyone taking Centrum right now? They make really good darts and stuff when you throw them because they're so hard. That's the only good thing that they're for. Because when you eat them, they go right through. They're almost not digestible at all, and they will come out the other end. In fact, if you filter, you'll find them. They're there. So all this stuff, Centrum's pharmaceutically made, and so it is, you know, yeah, it's bathtub vitamins. They make it in a chemical lab. It has nothing to do with actual vitamins. So replace 1 meal per day with a nutrition shake. Now that's kind of contingent. There is an option here. You can have 2 meals with a shake. If you want to lose more weight quickly, then replace 2 of your meals with a nutrition shake. Nutrition shake has all the vitamins, minerals, and calories you need. You're not losing out. You're just replacing it with higher quality stuff.